Wrong one. Let's see. Okay. Is the daf showing? I'm not sure if I did the right thing. Is the daf showing on the screen? Anybody?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So where are we? We're on a new Mishnah, the bottom of Chavdal base on the bottom, and that's the new Mishnah. So the first Mishnah was about Chomer b'Kodesh. There are 11 Chomers that Kodesh is more than Truma, and now it goes the opposite. Now I was going to say there are Chomers of Truma more than Kodesh. And we have to understand why. Of course, Kodesh is more Chomer. Why should it be that sometimes Truma was more Chomer? So the first one we had already, that in, we'll see the word Yehuda, that means the south of Eretz Yisrael, from Yerushalayim and down, that's the bottom. The south of Eretz Yisrael is called Yehuda, the north is called Galil. We'll get to that in the Gemara, why Dafka says Yehuda. But Amei Haaretz are trusted for making wine and oil that they want to bring to the Beis HaMikdash. We said for Nesachim and Rachas and Nesachim, they want to bring a wine and oil that they say is tahor. They watched it, especially that it should be tahor, so they trusted. And Truma, they're not trusted. That's the point. We said the reason before, but the Gemara is not going to repeat it. The reason is as far as Truma goes, they won't give it to a Kohen Chaver. The Chaver won't accept it, but they go to a Kohen Amoris. They have a lot of friends. The Yisraelim Amoris, they have Kohanim Amoris, and they'll give them the Truma, no problem. But to the Beis HaMikdash, if the Beis HaMikdash is not going to accept their Yayin and Shem, they'll say, well, we'll the whole Beis HaMikdash, and they're going to make a Bama Latzmo. So because of that, so we will need to be in order to trust the Amei Haaretz for Kodesh, even though we don't trust them for Truma. Before the Mishnah goes on to the next one, which is the bottom of the page, Kad Yain V'Kad Hashem, and it has something to say about Truma also. That even though we said that the Amei Haaretz is not trusted as far as Truma goes, but there are some exceptions. The first one is B'Shas HaGitos V'Avad Ma'afal HaTruma. During the season of pressing, the Gitos is the wine press, the bottom is the oil press. In the beginning of the season, so then they also go to the trouble to get a good mashgiach, and they get somebody that knows what he's doing, and he's retire all of their kalim, and make sure that they also want to, they know that they're Amei Haaretz, so they get their rub that they should make sure everything's good. Just if you leave it, if they leave it further, so then they're not trusted, they're going to make mistakes, and they'll make it tamei. But they are believed during the season of the wine press and the oil press, so then they are trusted even for Truma. But Kodesh is more lenient because he trusted the whole year. So Chomer b'Truma over Kodesh, that they're neman for Kodesh the whole year round, but they're not neman for Truma only during the season. It's good. Second point. Avru agidos va'avadim ve'viu locha v'shal yain shal Truma lo yikavlanu mimenu v'avu melicha lukas haba. This is sort of a side point about what we just finished saying. It's not a new leniency. It's just going to say that when we said that you are trusted during the season, that the Amoritz, by the season of pressing the wine, pressing the oil, you could give it to a Kohen Chaver, and the Kohen Chaver can accept it because he's trusted that he made it Torah during the pressing season. So what if it passed? Now it's already later than the season, so then he's not trusted. The Kohen can accept it if he has to assume that it's Truma Tmeya. But he could tell the Amoritz, don't give it to me yet, wait till next season, which is really very ironic because once it passed the season, we say, now he messed it up. So it doesn't get unmessed up when it comes the next season. It comes the next cycle. He has last year's stuff. But the whole thing is only exaggerated. So they said they believe during the season, they're not believed out of the season. During the season, he's even believed on last year's supplies, even though it's you would say that there's no sense to it because if it became Tamei, the Tamei doesn't go off when the next season comes around. The whole point of the season is that when a season comes, he brings the Chaver, brings the good Hashgacha services to come in and take care of his stuff. Once it got messed up, it got messed up. But they made it the kind of that during the season you are believed, so the Chaver could tell the Amoritz, I can't take it from you now, but please put it in your storage house and come back next pressing season, I'll be able to take it then. The last thing is another kula about Truma. We said before that he is believed for Kodesh, he does not believe for Truma. If somehow
the Kodesh is more Chamer.
So we said the reason why it's more lenient over here is because they're also going to build their own Bama. Right, that's what we said. So they believe him for Kodesh. It could be also, you could throw in that they're more careful for Kodesh also. They themselves are more careful for Kodesh because they know that this is going to go to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Amoritz also is going to be more careful. You can throw that in also. I didn't see the Gemara says that. The last thing is that even though we say he's not believed for Truma, he's believed for Kodesh. But if from the same barrel there's going to be both Truma and Kodesh, However, that's going to happen. The words it says here, I separated into it, lisocha. Some of it gives, I think, mitocha. Whatever the point is going to be, if it's going to be from the same barrel that there's going to be kodesh and truma, so then the same way it's believed on the kodesh is also believed on the truma also, because you can't split it up. If he's believed to the kodesh, what? Not the tfas, that the same way that if you're trusting him, you're trusting him. You can't say that
we
the
only
same barrel.
trust him because we're scared he's going to go build his own barn.
Yeah, yes, you're right. Right. But you can't split it up. Like you can't split it up. That if you're going to trust him, you trust him for that also. You can't say, well, it would be considered a bazillion for the kodesh. After the kodesh is good, and for the same barrel, the truma is not good. So therefore, if it's good for the kodesh, it's good for the truma also. So that was the first homer of the truma of the kodesh. That in Yehuda, we'll see Yehuda still doesn't make sense. What does that have to do with Yehuda? But the Amoris is believed for making kodesh tohar. If he says that this is, I watched this, that it should be pure for kodesh, he's trusted the whole year round, but truma is only trusted during the season. We had a couple of halachas that if he missed the season, he can come back next season and give the same product again, even though he knows that it's the same thing that already passed the season, but he waits till next season and gives it, and also can be accepted. And if from the same barrel there's going to be both kodesh and truma, so the same way he's believed on the kodesh, he's believed on the truma also. The second Chomer b'truma is the bottom of the page. Kadei yain v'kadei shemen. The words are very difficult, but let's just try to get something through it. Kadei yain v'kadei shemen. Now we're talking about the jugs of wine, the jugs of shemen. So the point is going to be, if we'll see the words at this point, I don't know if we're going to be able to make sense out of the words, but the point is going to be that there's also an issue about the kalim. Even though we said that you're neman for the kodesh and for the truma, how about for the kalim? How about the kalim? Is the Amor is going to be believed that he says that these kalim, I watched it, that they're Thor for Kodesh and for Truma. So the way it's going to come out, the Maskan, however it's going to read, is going to be, you can't see it in the Mishnah yet. What's going to come out is going to be that kalim for Kodesh, if it has Kodesh inside, he's going to be trusted on the kalim also. If there's no Kodesh, it just says that this kli, since it was made, I watched that it should be Tohar LaKodesh, not believed. On the Kodesh itself, he's believed. Like we said, he shouldn't make his own Beis HaMikdash. But on the Kalim, there's no reason to trust him. You don't have to trust him on the Kalim. So you can't take a Kli from someone who's giving you a card that he said, I watched that it should be Tohar for Kodesh. You can't trust him. But if it has Kodesh inside, so the same way that you trust him on the Kodesh, you can trust him on the Kli also. Good? Makes sense?
I mean,
but by truma, we're not going to trust him, even if it's full of truma. Means even sometimes you do trust him for truma during the season. You do trust him, but you don't trust him for the kalim. That's going to be another homer truma mi b'kodesh, that you don't trust him for the kalim, even if it's full of truma. That you're trusting him on the truma, but on the kodesh you could trust him on the kalim if it's full of kodesh. If he has wine that he's giving to the Beis HaMikdash for the Nesachim, and he said, so then the Kli is also considered Torah LaKodesh, and after you empty it, you can take the Kli, and the Kli is Torah LaKodesh. The Mishnah doesn't seem to say that, but I just said it sounds like, you don't see it in the words, but it must be the words, and we'll get to the Gemara soon. So the Mishnah said, Kadei yain v'kadei shemen, the jugs of the wine and the oil, which till now we spoke about, right, the wine and the oil itself. Now we're talking about the kadim. So it says something. The word medumos is very not clear what the word meduma. Usually meduma means that it's a mixture of chulin and truma, which at this point we don't know what that's talking about. It says they're trusted on those kadim during the season, during the season, and also before the season, 70 days. 70 days earlier than the season. What is that? Sounds like Kabbalah. What is it all talking about? So it has something to do. The Gemara is going to say that they did start preparing the jugs for the season, the barrels or whatever they need in order to store the storage containers that they need for the oil and the wine. They start preparing it 70 days earlier. What the word? How do you see this in the words about being trusted on the kalim of the kodesh if it's full of kodesh and not for the truma? Even if it's full of truma, we don't see in the words yet. We'll get to the Gemara. Maybe we'll see it better. So for the meanwhile, let's just concentrate, I think, on the first point of the Mishnah. The point was that in Yehuda, the Amoritz is trusted the whole year round.
I'm looking for Yehuda. I don't see the word.
The third word in the Mishnah. And for Truma, they're not trusted only during the season, the wine season, the oil season, when they're pressing. That's the first halach of the Mishnah. The Gemara now starts. Yehuda in Begalilo, it says in the Mishnah that they trusted in Yehuda, in the south of Eretz Israel, the whole south, if I'm more or less midpoint and down, and the north, which is called Galil, not. That's the most question. My timer. What does it have to do? What does it have to do with Yehuda and Galil? Amr Shlokish, there's a technical problem. It's impossible to get Kodesh from the north to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim and north, to get from certain areas in the Galil, there was a place that Kusim lived over there. Rashi says they gave it a din of Tumas Eretz Haman, since the Kusim lived over there. So they made the same reason that they made Chutz La'aretz to be tummy, maybe because they didn't bury with marking where the Tumas Mace is. So also this land, this Ritzua, this strip of land that was occupied by Kusim, they gave it a din of Tumas Eretz Haman. So it's not because he's Amar, it's even a Chaver. Even somebody who's a Chaver who would live in the Galil, he wouldn't be able to get any kind of Kodesh to the Beis HaMikdash because it has to pass through this strip of land which has Tumas Eretz Haman, and he wouldn't be able to because it's going to become Kodesh, it's going to become Tameh. So this point of Yehuda and Galil has nothing to do with Amoris. It has to do with that you can't get any kind of Kodesh from the north of Eretz Israel to the Beis HaMikdash at that time because there was a strip of land that had Tumas Eretz Haman. And therefore, the Mishnah talks about Yehuda only. That's the only place where it's practical. In Yehuda, in the south of Eretz Israel, if there are Amayoris over there, so then they're trusted for Kodesh, but they're not trusted for Truma. But it's nothing to do really with Yehuda and Golol. From Golol, you can't get any kind of Kodesh because when it passes through the strip of land, it's going to become Tameh. Tomorrow is a problem that there are ways how to get through. The Nesa B'Shira Table Migdal. There's a way to get through if you put it into a box. And it'll be like an ohel. Shita table migdal, different kinds of boxes, armoires, different kind of closets. So put it into, and that'll be an ohel. And then the ohel is mafsik to tuma. And even though on the ground has tumas eretz haman davir, but maybe it won't become tameh because you put the kachim into the box. The Gemara says no, it won't work. There's a question about a portable ohel. Does it have the power to stop the tuma? An ohel could stop tuma. It spreads tuma under it, and it stops tuma from going through it, like any kind of ball, right? If there's a tumas amaze and he's inside an ohel, so someone's on the roof, it doesn't go past the ohel. So too, a box that's going to be considered an ohel, if you put the tumah inside, if it would be considered a good ohel, then it would stop the tumah from going out and coming in. It wouldn't come in, wouldn't come out. So coming in our question. So the Gemara says, but there's a madam that says ohel zork. Ohel zork means a throne, which means that it's portable. Something which is moving. So then there's machlokes if it still retains the power to stop the tumah. And this Mandiyama holds that it doesn't. If it doesn't, so there's no way to get the Kodesh from the north of Eretz Yisrael to the Beis HaMikdash, even if you put it into an ohel, since it's portable, it's going to be moving, so it's not going to stop the tumah. The tumah is going to go into the box. The Tanya, Nichnas Le'el Samim B'Shida Table Migdal, Rabbi Metame, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Metayr. It says if someone goes into Chutz La'aretz in a box, call it a car, call it an airplane, whatever it might be, and he thinks that he's protected from the tumah of the Chutz La'aretz because he's inside that ohel. So it's machlokes. Rabbi says that he's still tamei because the portable ohel is not considered an ohel. Rabbi Yehuda holds that he's stored because it is considered an ohel. So you're right. The point of Rabbi Yehuda, there would be an eitzah to bring Kodesh from the north to Yerushalayim by putting it into a box. But according to Rabbi that says all ohel, there's no way to do it.
That's the problem with the airplanes flying over cemeteries.
Right, because if you hold that oil so ohel, also it could be that so then also the airplane's made out of metal, whatever the issues might be. So that's the question that when they go over a cemetery, so then the tumah should go into the airplane.
Metal is worse than
if it will be made out of some materials that doesn't transfer. But they do talk about also the planes, even that the mace is inside the plane.
Right.
So I didn't look into the details. I'm sure that they did it in a way that Kohanim, if they say that those who take care of it, I don't know the details of any Kohanim. Anybody knows about this thing? If you have any Kohanim on Zoom, if anybody wants to tell us anything they know about the. Okay, so the Gemara's first question was about Shida Tevo Migdal. Is it possible to get the kachim from the north to Yerushalayim by putting it into an ohel? So it says it depends on the machlokes. And our Mishnah that says Yehuda's because it holds like Rebbe that it's not going to be an eitzah, ohel, and therefore there's no way to get the kachim into Yerushalayim. There must another kasha of there's another way to protect something from tumah sameis, and that is if you have a earthenware jug, kli cheres, that tumah doesn't come in from the outside, not because of oil, but because of kli cheres. A kli cheres is not vulnerable to tumah from the outside, and also mukas hamat postel. It has to be with a tightly closed cover. And those are the conditions in order that the tumor should not go into the kli. So put the kachim into the kli, into the kli cheres, and then carry it through the ritzua shel kusim, and it won't be affected. Amar Rabbi Elazar Shonin, we learned ein hektish in the kodesh nitzol with samat pasel. That even though there's such a thing as samat pasel, it seems to be a chumrah. Maybe that's also included what Amish is saying, that it doesn't get protected. It's probably a chumrah that even though the Torah says that samat pasel does protect the tumor doesn't go inside, but that's only for chulin. But they made a truma, but they made a chumrah that kodesh it doesn't get saved by samat pasel. But Tanya, but there was a problem. The Brisa seems to say that it's only an exception by paraduma. But Tanya in chatos nitzelas samat pasel. The Brisa says the chatos, which means paraduma, the ashes or the water, that's not saved by samat pasel. But we could deduce my love for kodesh nitzol isn't a mashma that if we just speak a lower level, kodesh is less than paraduma. That over there it will be saved, and you're saying that kodesh is not nitzol with samat pasel. The Gemara says no, don't derive that from that Brisa over there. There, the Brisa that's coming to differentiate between the ashes, something which is already designated and made for paraduma, that the ashes or the water that was the ashes were put into, but the water alone, if it was not yet paraduma water, it was just designated as going to be used, but the ashes were not yet put onto the water, that could be saved by samat pasel. But kodesh cannot be saved samat pasel. The Gemara has one more kasha on this. Ula said that the Talmidei Chachamim, the Chaverim, it would be metaher in the Godel. Means that even after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, they still would make things Torah. They still were careful to make things that should be Torah, Mashiach should come, and they should not make things Torah. And you're saying that in Godel, there's no purpose of doing that, because anyway, they're not going to be able to get it to Yerushalayim. If they had been Madkan means to be metaher. Chaverim, metaherim begodel. That's Aramaic for these three words. So if they would be in Yehuda, so fine. They're doing things on Taras HaKodesh because they want the Beis Hamikdash to be built. They'll be ready. But why do it in Godel? Anyway, won't be able to get to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says, "Menichin they don't bring it to Yerushalayim. They leave it in Godel. And when Eliyahu Navi is going to come, he's going to be able to say either he's going to be Matayr the area, the strip of Kusim, or he's going to tell you how to go through in a place where there's no kever. So it's true that you can't take things from the Golol to Yerushalayim because you're going to pass by that strip of land and it's going to become Tamid. That's the end of that Gemara. Just to sum it up, the Gemara is just bothered by one word in the Mishnah. It says Yehuda, and the Chora has nothing to do with Yehuda and Golol. The thing of the Amoritz, there's no difference where he is. The Gemara says it's true, nothing to do with Amoritz. It has to do with anybody. That no one could get any kind of Kodesh from the north to Yerushalayim because there was a strip of land called Ritzua Shel Kusim. There's a question, I think, in the Mefarshim where that is exactly, but it's a Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about it also. I forgot where, and they talk about what it means. But there's a strip of land that the Kusim occupied, and they gave it a din of Eretz Sa'amim, a din of Chuslavas as far as Tumah goes. So it's impossible for anybody, not only Amoritz. Nobody could get any kind of Kodesh from that area from the north to Yerushalayim because they're going to have to go through that strip of land. There's no way to get through. The Gemara has a couple of ways, two ways that the Gemara offers how to get through. The first one was in an Ohel. If you hold Ohel Zorek Shmei Ohel, that a portable Ohel is considered an Ohel, so you can get it through and it's protected from Tumas Mace. But the Gemara says you're right, but according to Rabbi, you can't because you cannot. Because Rabbi holds Ohel Zorek Lav Shmei Ohel. It's not a good Ohel. Second point, the Gemara talks about a summit puzzle, which means a klicheres, an earthenware vessel that's tightly covered. So also the Torah says that it protects from Tumah going inside, Tumas Mace going inside. But the Gemara says that there's a chumrah that Kodesh doesn't help, even though the Brisa seems to say that only for Paratuma it doesn't help. It doesn't mean that it doesn't help for Kodesh either. The last point was that it says that in the times of Ula, people would still make things Torah in Galil. What's the use? It's not going to help. Even when Mashiach comes, they're not going to be able to go through to get to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says no. When Eliyahu Navi is going to come, then they'll be able to go through. It's true. If nowadays, if they're going to make something Torah for Kodesh, don't take it to Yerushalayim because it's going to become Tameh on the way. But save it in Galil, and then when Mashiach's going to come, they'll tell you Eliyahu Navi will come. He'll either be Matahar the Ritzua, or he'll say how you can go through. They'll take away the graves, whatever it's going to be. But there'll be a way how to get it to Yerushalayim. But now there's no way to get it through. So that was all the side points.
So
Yeah.
everywhere besides Yisrael is considered.
And there's Thomas Eretz Amen. This thing called Thomas Eretz Amen, and talks about the gush or the avir, the land, the ground, the earth, or even the land. So Agav, just halachically also, there's more concern for a Kohen to go to Chutz La'aretz than there is for Yisrael. Anybody to go to Chutz La'aretz is an issue, but for a Kohen it's even more harmful because there's an issue about Thomas Eretz Amen. So Kohanim should be more careful to stay in Eretz Yisrael.
So what about a casket that comes?
Yeah,
Right, so how do they bring it? What's the question?
Casket.
Right, what's the
They
question?
go on him on the plane and they
On the
know that.
plane, oh, that's on the plane. So it
But
could
I
be,
didn't
so
know
I
that.
don't know what they do in the plane in order to make sure that the tumor shouldn't go from the casket to the corner that are on the plane. If they have good planes, right, the El Al, and they're gonna have hashgacha that they're not gonna become tummy. And
It's an aluminum.
Don't go to them.
and how about if they go over cemeteries and things like that?
That is less of a problem.
I gotta speak to Matan because he knows about that.
Uh-huh.
And,
Yeah, he's a-
that's-
someone he's a traveler.
Yeah, he travels
Yeah.
around and he knows.
If there's any articles that we can bring about it to know the details, we once looked at, we once looked into it. We once looked into it. I think in this year something came up and we looked into it a little bit, but I forgot the details.
Well, I know. I
We have
spoke to
Cook
him.
from what do you call it? He used to go in a, he used to put himself in a sack,
Mhm.
and then after, and he closed the bag, put in like a.
I've definitely seen the bags on planes.
What?
I've definitely seen people in the bag on a plane.
And then I was told that after September 11th, the security doesn't let them do it anymore. They're too scared of this. Anything looks something strange.
Mhm.
So.
Okay. The Gemara continues. So we said that even though, so we finished the Chomer is that by Kodesh they're Neman and by Truma they're not Neman. But now it says that even the Truma they're Neman during the season. That the Kohanim, the Yisraelim, the Amoritz, is trusted that the Truma is store by the season. But the reason is because he's Mataras. He brings in the Ashgacha company to clean out, to kasher everything he needs, not to kasher, but to be Matar all of his kalim and make sure that the polim, the workers are going to be tor. They take it. The rabbi comes in, Ashgacha company, special thing to help people to make things tor. And by the season, by the oil press season and by the wine season, the pressing season, so then it's tor. Even by Truma, it's permissible.
We always said that Truma is more makel than Kodesh. We already said that.
No, we said the opposite. We said Chomer b'Truma b'Kodesh. We just started the Mishnah today. Look at the first words, Chomer b'Truma. That is a Chomer of Truma. We said the reason why Kodesh, you said it yourself before, that Kodesh is because that they shouldn't build their own Bama. They shouldn't make their own Beis Hamikdash. So we make them more by Kodesh the whole year is believed. By Truma, we don't trust them the whole year, but we do trust them during the season. Geminu, Gemara is a conscious because it seems from another place that they don't trust it even during the season. Agomer Zesa, this is talking about Amoritz. Amoritz who's finishing his olives, making his olives, that he harvested his olives and seems he's making olive oil. He should leave one box that's going to be the truma, and he should not make it into oil. If he makes it into oil, it's not, the coin's not going to be able to accept it. He should leave it a box of olives, and it should not become muksha. It should not become vulnerable to tumah, and then he can give it to the kohen. We said before that even Amoritz is believed to say that it never became muksha. It says here, La'ani Kohen, some say La'ene Kohen, it says on the side, La'ene Kohen, he should give it, that the Kohen should see that it never became muksha, and then the Kohen could accept it. But it's mashma that, no, the Kohen does not see it never was muksha. The Kohen's, I don't know what La'ene Kohen means. It means that Amoritz is trusted that it shouldn't become muksha. But he knows that nothing else was done, it wasn't made into oil. I'm not sure what the word Ani or Ene means, but the point is that the Amoritz, we tell the Amoritz, don't make it into olive oil because you're not going to be trusted. Just leave it the olives that are not muksha. So the kasha is Amish says V'shasakitos, he is trusted. This only means if it's late in the season already, it's past the season. Charfi means early in the season, that's when the season is and he's trusted. But if he happens to have late season and it's already over, the main season is over already, then he's not trusted anymore. And we tell him, so don't make olive oil out of it because the chaver is not going to accept it from you. If you want to give it to Kohanim Chaverim, so then leave it that it should be olives that were not pressed. And it's not a couple tumah because it never was muksha. So the Gemara asked the kasha, the Gemara answered the kasha. That the Gemara is asking, why do you have to leave it as olives during the season? The Amoritz is trusted also. The answer is you're right, it's after the season. What's considered, this is not so clear to me. What's considered late? What's considered the late season? He told him, like your father has late blossoming, late blooming olives. And that's always it's a late field, but it doesn't help us too much because we don't know what his father's was. So I don't know what that means. How are we supposed to know what that means after? But the Gemara continues, tries another test for the kasha. Rav Yosef says that this is, yes. This place where it says, is it a Mishnah or a Brisa or a Gomer? This doesn't say, what is it? It seems to be a Mishnah, a Gomer. So, The question was, why does he have to leave it as olives? Why can't he make it into olive oil? And he is believed during the season. The answer is it's talking about in Golo, which is not so clear. What's the difference if it's Golo or not? If we said a Golo before, it has to do with the tumor getting it there, it's getting it to the Beis Hamikdash. But here we're talking about. So what is the difference if it's a Golo or not? Taisus explains here that in Golo, here's the Taisus over here. He says that there was a lot of shemen, like the Gemara says, other places that Golo had a lot of oil, and therefore they have so much oil that they can't do everything during the season. Some of it lasts till after the season. So it's therefore in Golo, in general, we wanted to say that the Nemonos of the Amoritz, the fact that we trust him during the season is only in Yehuda. In Golo, we don't trust him. That's what Yosef suggested. That the
Why?
Mishnah,
Because it's so much oil. What's that going to make?
so Taisa says maybe it's therefore sometimes the oil is after the season. I don't understand. If it's after the season, it's not good for anybody. We're talking about during the season, and for some reason, which the Gemara doesn't explain, Galil is worse than Yehuda. The Gemara is going to say right away that it's not true. That Galil is just as good as Yehuda as far as during the season. It says in the Brisa that Eva Yarden, Transjordan on the east, and the Golil is the same halacha as in Yehuda as far as this halacha. As far as Kachim, we said you can't technically get Kachim from the north to Yerushalayim. But as far as Truma, that the Amoritz is believed during the season for Truma, so then there's no difference if it's Yehuda or Golil, Eva Yarden. He's trusted in all places. So Rav Yosef was disproven. There's no difference if it's Golil or not. And then was going to come back in 2 lines to say that only the first answer is the right answer, that it's Ba'afli. If it's after the season, that's why he's not believed. And leave it as olives, not as olive oil, in order to give it to the Kohen. But during the season, there's no difference if it's Yehuda or Golil, they're always Nema.
Is after the season?
That's what the word Afli means. It means late. The late blossoming olives. The Brisa continues. We don't need this part, but it's interesting. Each thing has its season. That during the wine season, the wine press season, that's when you believe for wine, but you not believe for oil at that time. Even though you might say everything's Torah, no, only the things that are during the season of the wine. And for the oil, he's believed during the oil season, the oil press season, but he's not believed on the wine during the oil season, not believed on the oil during the wine season. That's the end of the Brisa. But what does it say? It says Beferish, even Golil, they will also believe. So therefore, go back to the first terrace. The first terrace was Ba'afli. Just to sum up like the Gemara had a problem that Ram Mishnah says that Amoritz is trusted during the season, that it's Torah. The Kash was that the Mishnah says that even Amoritz, we tell him that if you want to give it the Tara, leave it as olives because that are not muksha. But once you're going to be machshav it, then it's not going to be accepted by the Kohanim Chaverim. And the Gemara says it's only if he has a late season. If he's during the season, he doesn't have to because our Mishnah says that he is believed during B'shas Hagitos. During the season, he is believed.
He brings in the Hashem, he brings the Rabban.
Right. The Mishnah continued that even if the season passed by, he could save it the next season and give it to him, even though it's not logical because once it became Tameh, it doesn't become Torah again. But they made the takana during the season you believed, out of the season you not believed. So if you passed the season, so you can put it away in his machsan, the amoritz, and then give it to him by next season. And even though he says he recognizes it's the same barrel, it's okay. Avru Agit, he has a production date, whatever, he knows that it's last year's, it's okay. Avru Agitos Vabadim Bavil of Chavish Al Yain, so Lo Yikablan Mimenu, the Talmud Chacham, the Chaver Kohen should not accept it. Avru Manicha Lagasabo, the amoritz can leave it for next season and then give it to him, then he could accept it. The most the Kasha Bowman named Rav Sheshes, they asked Rav Sheshes, how about if the Kohen did accept it? The Kohen should not have accepted it because it's considered Truma Tmeah. But then his next season it is going to be acceptable. What if the Kohen did accept it and it's now in his mach? Could he keep it in his machsan? And then is it going to become Torah the next season? Of course, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't become Torah. It doesn't make sense as far as technical. It doesn't become Torah. But it's as good as being maybe in the Amoris's machsan. In the Amoris's machsan also, it doesn't become Torah. But they made the takana that during the season he's believed, after the season he's not believed. Next season is believed again, even on last year's product. So maybe even if the Kohen accepted it and it's in his machsan, he also can wait till next season and then it becomes Torah again. Maybe. So they asked Rav Sheshes. Amlut in Isua. So Rav Sheshes said, I have arrived from a Mishnah. A Mishnah Demai. Chaber Amoritz. Sheyoshu as Aviyam Amoritz. 2 brothers, one was a Chaber, one was an Amoritz. And the father also was an Amoritz. And the father died, and he left over to his children the Yerusha. And he has over there things that are vulnerable to Tumah, and since he's an Amoritz, the father was an Amoritz, then it'll be considered Tameh, and things that were not ever Mukshal Kabal Tumah, never became vulnerable to Tumah, and it's Sholi Torah. So the Chaver would like to have the things that are Sholi Torah, because he can't use his father's things that became Tameh. So they want to split the Yerusha. But the problem here is that the chaver cannot take things that are considered tamei and give it to his brother and switch with him, because that's considered being mashal him. If he's giving his own, he can't get out. He can't help his brother. His brother's not more. He's all kinds of things that are tamei. What could he do? But he can't give it to him. If he's giving it to him, it's left able to sit in mikshal. Don't make a stumbling block. So that's the brother, the son who's a chaver, who has a brother who's an amoros, the father was an amoros, he was a chaver. So he has a problem that if he's going to take the Yerusha and then make a switch with the brother, he'll tell the brother, I'll take part of the things that are Torah, I'll give you the things that are Tameh. He can't do that because he's being machal his brother to eat Truma Tameh. So what does he do? If it's all the same product, it's all chitim, it's all wheat. The father gave wheat, some of it was muksha, some of it was not muksha. So then he could say, you take that wheat, I'll take this wheat, because it's all wheat. Every brother has a chelik in all the products and all the different things. If the father gave over bequeath different items, so everyone, all the brothers, all the sons have a chelik, equal chelik in each item. They have a chelik in each item. It isn't that they have a chelik in the value. They have a chelik in each item. So if they divide the chitim, and he knows that some chitim is Torah, some chitim is tamei, he can say, you take the tamei, I'll take the Torah, because the chaver brother never gave to his brother tamei stuff. That's how you yarshin that, but I'll yarshin this part. That's okay. But tolat the yain shem makom ploni, vani yain shem makom ploni. Some wine is Torah, some wine is tamei. He can say, I'll take the Torah, you take the tamei. That's okay. He can't say that you take all the things that are tamei, the things that were mukhshal l'kabel tuma, and I'll take all the things that are not mukhshal l'kabel tuma, because if it's going to be two different items, let's say it'll be, you take the wheat that's never been mukhshal l'kabel tuma, I'll take the wheat which was never mukhshal l'kabel tuma, and you take the wine because over there is the issue of tuma, because that would be that he's making a switch with him. Each one has an equal share both in the wheat and both in the wine. And if he's going to say you take all the
tamei stuff,
well, and I'll take it. So that means that he's giving it to him. He's making a deal. That's a private deal after the Yerusha. In the Yerusha, everyone officially gets an equal share in every type of item. And then if he's going to make a deal, that's a private deal on his own. And he's selling, so to speak, the tamei stuff in order to get the Torah stuff. And he's being machshel his brother by giving him the tamei stuff. So that's not allowed to do. He's not allowed to be machshel his brother.
Exactly.
So far everything's good. Now it says
it's not fair mitzad taking the shufra of his father's Yerusha.
He's nothing. The Amoritz doesn't make a difference to him. Tim is all the same.
He's all the same.
He's Amoritz. He doesn't see this as more kosher than the other one. But the chaver, the one stuff because he can't use the other one. So he can't say Tola Tolach Vata Yovesh Tola Tachitim Bani Sorim. He can't say that I know that the Tachitim is problematic and the Sorim is not. I'll take, because each one has an equal chaylik in each kind, and therefore it'll be that he's being mashal his brother by selling him the bad stuff in order to get the good stuff. The Tani Allah, it says in the Brayso, so what does he do in the case where he can't switch it with his brother? So Yashin Tumat Meir. Also Chaver Soif Halach Umaniach Yavesh. What should he do with it? He should burn it. He has to get rid of it. He can't, and nothing to do with Tumat Meir. What should he do? It's Tumat Meir, Yashin Tumat Meir. So what should he do? The Yavesh, the things that are dry, they never became Mokshal Kabul Tumah. That's Torah. But the ones that became Tomei by his father, so nothing to do with it. Tumat Meir. But that kind is the information. Now we're going to bring a raya about this question we had. Can the chaver save it for next season and then it becomes Torah? Amai, if you say that you can leave it for the next season and it becomes Torah, even if it says it belongs to the chaver already, why should he burn it? But let him save it for the next season and then it becomes Torah. What was the problem? That he Yashin tells his father something which his father's not Moritz, and he has to be choshen that his tummy. But we're saying that even the father, it's only a problem when it's not during the season, but during the season of the wine press, then it is believed. And not only is it believed, next season it becomes good again. So if you say that I could even keep it, that the Yoresh could keep it, and the one who got it could keep it the next season and it becomes Torah, so too, the one the Yarshin over here, why should he burn it? Let him wait till the next season and then it becomes Torah again. The Gemara answer is not a raya. The Davash ain't lo gas. It's talking about a kind of item that doesn't have a set season. Some things have a set season, some things don't have a set season. Rashi brings down Shechel Tmorim, some kind of a thing that doesn't have a set season, whatever the case was. So there's no set season over there, and therefore that's the case. But Enechanami, maybe if it would be wine or oil, things that have a set season, that's Torah. So then he would be able to save it for the next season. The Gemara is not a kasha. The halach is that during the regal, during the Chagim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, they took off, they suspended Tumas Amoritz. We're going to see that at the end of the Masechta, that this whole Tumah of Amoritz, they suspended it during the regular, Kol Yisrael Chavei, everybody should be together. It shouldn't be that the Talmidei Chachamim should have to separate themselves from the Amoritz. So there's no Tumas Amoritz. So if the halach is that you can save it for the next season, so here too, save it for the regular. And everything has a regular, becomes Torah. The answer is, without Hashem Mishtamal the regular. Enochnami would be able to. It's talking about something that it's not going to keep. It doesn't have the shelf life to be able to keep until the regular. But Enochnami, if he could wait for the regular, so he might. He may. The Gemara doesn't prove the answer to the question. It just rejected the proof that it's not good. Again, the Gemara had a question to Rav Sheshes that was asked, since the Mishnah says that if the Amoritz could, even though it passed the season, he could say wait for next season. What's the then if he gave it to the Chover and he has it already, could he also save it for the next season and it becomes Torah? Rav Sheshes thought he had a right that you cannot, that the Chover may not. And that the Gemara said is not a proof. You could be talking about a thing that doesn't have a season, and if also there's no, it can't keep till the next regular, but maybe you would be able to keep it for the next reason, for the next season. It doesn't, Gemara doesn't paskin, it just leaves alone that there's no raya that it's not good. Maybe it is good. If we go on to the next sugya, if everything's good, it says something in the Mishnah that if, even though he's not, Amoritz is not believed for the Truma, but he is believed for the Kodesh, if in the same barrel there's going to be both Truma and Kodesh, however that happens, the Gemara doesn't go into it, how could you have it? But if he has both Truma and Kodesh from the same barrel, so then just like he's believed on the Kodesh, he's believed on the Truma also. The Gemara starts off with a left field case, and it's going to come back to our Mishnah to use it as a proof. So we start a new halacha, now Naslam, that's in all this Perek Yud Ches, and it's also brought down here, it says also in Psachim. Tanan Naslam, we learned the Mishnah. Modim, Beishamu, Beishillel, Shabot can losi Pesach, Vein both can locally Truma. There's some kind of a leniency that you're allowed to check Bodkin. The Gemara will by the way say, what does that mean by Bodkin? But it says there's some kind of a leniency that we do rely on for people doing a Korban Pesach, but we don't rely on it for people that are eating Truma. What is the case? What is the case that you rely on some kind of a leniency for Korban Pesach and you don't rely on it for eating Truma? My Bodkin, what are we referring to? Amar Yehuda Mashmuel. There's a halacha that by Beis Pras we have both halachas are going to be about a Beis Pras, that is talking about a place where there's a suffix that there might be bones of a dead man that are scattered. The halacha is we had it before earlier in different masechtas. It talks about a Beis Pras that was shenechrash, that there was a there was a field where there was a grave, and by mistake, whatever happened, hopefully by mistake, that it was plowed over, and the grave, that there were bones in the grave, it's possible that the plow scattered it over the field, and the Kohen does not allow to go in that field because choshesh that it's he'll step on a bone or kick a bone, something like that. The halach is that a bone is mitame b'magav masa. It's not mitame b'ohel, but it is mitame by contact or by carrying it. So therefore, the Kohen is considered a tumah drabanan, a basic closed drabanan. With the rice, say not choshesh, but drabanan yes. But there's a way that you could get through the basic forest. There's the Kohen to go through the basic forest. If he's going to make sure that he's not going to touch any of the bones, so there's a leniency. Sometimes it's going to say for Korban Pesach. What's the case? Yehuda Mishmuel said that he could blow. Why does he blow? He gets down on all four to be able to be close to the ground and see what he's doing, and he blows the earth away, whatever he blows. And if he'll see if there's a bone over there, if it'll get uncovered, whatever he blows, and he'll be able to see if there's a bone. And then if he sees he's going slowly and he's checking, so then he can get through the base of Pras, and he says, I didn't touch any bone. And the Gemara is going to say also, this is only for Korban Pesach, for Truma not. If he goes through that field, it's considered Tameh, and he can eat Truma, because maybe he touched a bone. But for Korban Pesach, we do rely on it, which is ironic. You're relying on it for a Korban, you're not relying on it for Truma. Another case, the Gemara says, there's a halacha that if a Beis Pras was trampled on, people walk through it, let's say not Kohen, whatever the case would be, whatever it is, it was trampled, people walk through it. So you can assume that any bone that was there, a small bone, we're not talking about big bones, talking about tiny bones, the size of a sorah, the size of a barley. So you can assume that it was stepped on, that it was crushed, and it's less than a sorah, and the Kohen's allowed to go through it. But again, he's going to say that this is only for a Korban Pesach. For Korban Pesach, he's allowed to rely that any of the bones that were there of size became crushed to less than the size, and if he went through it, he's Torah. But for Truma, you can't rely on that. And like the Gemara explains, both of these kulas, this bodkin is either going to be that you're allowed to go through it blowing as you go along on the floor, or if it was trampled on, so you're allowed to rely on that. But when is that? Only for Korban Pesach, not for Truma. Lo sif Pesach, lo midu devrein b'mokim paris. Lo chlei Truma, midu devrein b'mokim misa. For Korban Pesach, they didn't It's only things drabanan over here. So they didn't uphold their words if it's going to knock down the Korban Pesach. The person's not going to be able to do the Korban Pesach, and not to do a Korban Pesach as a Chiv Koris. So therefore, they took down, they waived their halacha that the basic process would make him tamei in order to be able to do the Korban Pesach. But Ochlei Truma, they didn't uphold their words. Rashi says the reason is because there's no emergency. Don't eat the Truma. Somebody else, you eat the Truma after you go to 7 days waiting and go to the mikveh and have Azar Shlishi or Shvi. It says here, the Makam Misa here is going to mean that if he would eat the Truma and he is tamei, then it will be a Chiv Misa B'nei Shemayim, and there's no rush to do it, so don't do it. So what we have so far, a left field Mishnah, nothing to do with us yet, and it says that there's certain kinds of investigations that you're allowed to rely on in order to do the Korban Pesach, but it's not good enough to eat Truma. Now there came a question, what if both of them, he has a Korban Pesach to do, and he went through and he's relying on for Korban Pesach, he makes the Korban Pesach, he went through the base of pras that was either Nidosh or he was Menapech as he went through, and he does the Korban Pesach. And now he says, can I eat Truma? So it'll be like even more ironic that we're going to tell him Korban Pesach he did, but don't eat Truma. Like if it's good for the Korban Pesach, if it's only going to get the Truma alone, we could be machman Truma more than Korban Pesach. But if the same person right here, he went through the Beis Pras, you're going to say that a Korban Pesach he can do it, can eat Truma? Ula Amar Badek Lepischa Motel Lechol B'Trumaso, Rabba Ula Amar Badek Lepischa Asal Lechol B'Trumaso. Machlokes Ula and Rabba Bar Ula. Ula said that you could trust. Once he did it for Korban Pesach, he could do it for Truma also. Rabbi Ula said no. They only lenient for Korban Pesach because you have to. It's an emergency, and you shouldn't lose out on the Korban Pesach. But for Truma, don't rely on it. And now the Gemara goes back to our Mishnah and says our Mishnah is a proof to Ula. Amalei Husaba, a certain old man said to Rabbi Bar Ula, don't argue on Ula. The proof Ula is right that if it's good for the Korban Pesach, it's already then in this sitting in this case, not that we're going to say that always is good for Truma. We're masking is not good for Truma, but a person who went to the base of Pras and he did the Korban Pesach, it's good for him for Truma also. That nan Kavasei, we have a Mishnah which is going to be a support to him. It's our Mishnah. It says that's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that even though the Amoros is not believed on the Truma, but if he uses from that barrel, he also uses it for Kodesh, and over there he is believed. So it'll be too much of a irony to say that the part that's also designed for the Kodesh, to say that for the Kodesh is good, but for the Truma it's not good. So you see, Alma, what do you see from our Mishnah? With the Me'amen HaKodesh, Me'amen Nami HaTruma, that if he's believed to the Kodesh, simultaneously he's believed to the Truma also. Since you have to trust him for the Kodesh, you could rely on this Tahara of the Beis HaPras as far as Pesach goes, so you can't say that's not good for Truma. It's a right too that it is good. If that's good, we go on to the last part of the Mishnah, which we said in the Mishnah, we didn't see too much, the words weren't so clear. Something about the jugs. And we said that even though the beginning of the Mishnah spoke about trusting the Amoritz as far as the Kodesh goes and Truma during the 7 days, during the season, how about the jugs? So that's what we're going to talk about now. We have our Mishnah, Kadayan Kadeshema, we don't know what the words mean yet, but let's go to a Bryce. At the time we learned in a Bryce the following rule. The Amoritz is not trusted for kankanim. That means jugs, like we say by Hanukkah, right? So kankan means the jug. Over there, it's talking about oil. Here we're talking about wine, whatever. So the Amoritz is not trusted for the jugs, and also not for truma. That's the brisa. Below al truma. So the one wants to know what does the brisa mean? Kankanim demai. What kind of jugs? Kankanim the kodesh. The Gemara thinks that he is trusted for the jugs, since you trust him for the Kodesh, and then we're going to talk about the Kodesh, which is it's inside. The Gemara is going to talk about the Kodesh, which is inside these jugs. So you have to trust him for the jugs also. The jugs also Torah. Ela kan kanan the Truma. You want to talk about that the jugs that Truma is not believed for, not believed that they could Torah. Surely it's not even believed on the Truma itself. Shita, hashtag Truma lo mehemen kankanim mehemen. If you don't trust him for the Truma itself, so you're going to trust him for the kankanim. So the Gemara doesn't know what does it mean that you don't trust Amoritz about the tower of the jugs. So the Gemara explains what does the brisa mean. Ella bereikanim the kodesh uv'shayim v'sashana. One, b'malei the Truma uv'shasakitos. That you don't trust him. Kankanim means that you don't trust him for the jugs of kodesh if it's empty. Bereikanim. Bereikanim means there's no kodesh inside. He says, I took care of this jug from the time that it was made. I watched that there shouldn't be tamei at all. but there's no kodesh inside. He just designated it that it's going to be Torah kodesh. You don't trust him. We come to kodesh even the whole year round. There's no difference by kodesh the whole year round or the chorah. There's no difference what time it is. That you always trust him for the kodesh itself, but you don't trust him for the jugs if it's empty jugs. But if it would be full jugs, it has kodesh inside, you would trust him. You trust him for the jugs also. But by truma, you don't trust him even in jugs. Rashi says that it is very ironic that it comes during the season. He wants to give truma to the Kohen Chaver, and the Kohen Chaver is not accepted from him. The truma is Torah because he made his business to get the kashrut company, the Tara company, Tara supervision. Now we have kashrut supervision. It's going to be Tara supervision. They came to his Dam Oretz and make sure everything is Torah, and the Kohen Chaver is now being given truma by Dam Oretz. But he says to the Amoritz, pour it into my kelim because I can't trust your kelim. So the wine that comes out of the barrel, we say is Torah, but the barrel not. Even though it's B'shas Hagitos, because they made the takana not to trust them on those barrels. That's how we came up shot in the Brisa. Now we have to go to our Mishnah and fit it into our Mishnah somehow. The Mishnah said in our Mishnah says Kadiyad v'Kadei Shemen Amudum Mo'os. Tanan Kadiyad v'Kadei Shemen Amudum Mo'os. What do those words mean? The Dum usually means that it's a mixture of Truma and Chulin. What does that affect us over here? That there's chula and truma, and if it says something here that kad yain v'kad shemen, what does it say in the Mishnah? Kad yain v'kad shemen, amanu maleim b'shas hakitos v'kadim v'abadim v'kodem l'gito shivim yom. That he is trusted. It says something here that he is trusted. The Mishnah says something about being trusted, and meduma usually means mixed truma and chulin. That's what the word usually means, but nothing to do with kodesh. And you're saying that he's only believed for kodesh, he's not believed for truma. The Mishnah seems to say that he's trusted on the kaddim of truma also, something like that. My love with the most of truma, and it says that he is trusted. I mean, the Rabbi doesn't mean that. Here it means different than usual. With the most the kodesh, it means that it's something which is meduma for kodesh. What does meduma for kodesh mean? The Gemara is going to say that he intended to take out kodesh from here. Mi'ika dimur kodesh is such a thing. He told me that he's making sure that his tevel, which is not yet taken out, truma, it's tevel, but he's going to take out from here chulin and truma, and also he says that I want to use some of the wine for kodesh also. So since there's kodesh in the barrel also, or something which is designated for kodesh, so therefore he's trusted on the barrel also. It comes out so far that another chumrah of truma, in the Mishnah, it's very hard to see it, but another chumrah of truma over kodesh is that on kodesh, when there's kodesh inside, he believes also on the barrel that it's also Torah. But by truma, even if it's full of truma during the gitos that is believed on the truma, he's still not believed on the barrel. And here it says that even if there's not kodesh inside, but it's designated that he's going to take out from here kodesh, he's going to make it kodesh. Right now it's not kodesh, but it's designated that it is going to be kodesh. So he's also trusted on the barrel. Tais asked the question: if we're talking about kodesh, so then what does it have to do with? It says in the Mishnah that he's believed during the Shas Hagitos. Also, if you just look at the Mishnah again, let's go back to scroll back to the Mishnah. It says Kadiyam v'Kadei Shemen, top line. Hamadum Mos. That he's trusted during the season. Once we say it's talking about kodesh, we didn't say anything about the season. The season until now was the Ger Truma, but kodesh is believed the whole year round. This is Pesach Kasha. If you're talking about kodesh, once you say the Mishnah is talking about kodesh, so why does it say he's only believed during the season and 70 days earlier? We'll see about the 70 days in a second. But Pesach asked the Kasha, not only 70 days before the season, the whole year round. That by kodesh is Neman, the whole year round. Here's Rabbi Chanan, that it's here talking about that he only designated it to take out kodesh, not that it actually has kodesh inside. Therefore, they weren't lenient the whole year round, only by the season. And then the Mishnah sends off that as far as the season goes, the barrels are already prepared for the season, not only during the season. The season means the time that you start pressing the wine and the oil. But as far as the barrels, you have to prepare the barrels before the season. So how much before do you prepare the barrel? 70 days. 70 days before the season, the pressing season, that's when they start preparing. And also they trusted the Amoritz that his barrels are going to be Torah. If he designates it to use it for Kodesh, and there's wine inside that's designated to take out kachim from it, then we're going to trust him that the barrels are also tahor. The Mishnah, the Gemara ends off, Kodem Lagito Shivim Yom, 70 days before the season, pressing season. Am Rabbi, Shvam Yina who, the Laveda, Rista, the Mitrach, Agufa, Shivim Yom, and Mikami Matzah. From here we see the din is that it's incumbent, it's the responsibility of the Aris. Aris is a sharecropper that if he's his own balabais, he can do what he wants. You don't have to say that that he should do that. But a person who has a job to take care of somebody else's field, so it's his job to make sure that he has the barrels. Gulfi is the jugs 70 days before the pressing time. That's the time to get ready. And you see the Mishnah takes for granted that 70 days, that's when they start getting the barrels ready. So as far as our halach is saying, is that there's a leniency by Kodesh that if there's Kodesh inside the barrel, you trust him for the barrel also. The barrel is also Torah. And even if there's it's not yet Kodesh, but he's going to take, as designated, he's going to take out wine for Kodesh from the Nesachim from this barrel, you trust him that the barrel is also Tohar. But Truma is more Chomer but Truma, that you don't trust him even if it's full of Truma. Those are the two halachas for today. Just to sum it up again from the beginning, the Mishnah said that there are two chumras of, so far two, they're going to come in more. Tomorrow's going to be more. But so far, Mishnah says two chumras of Truma more than Kodesh. The first one is that for Kodesh, the Amoris is believed the whole year round. Agav, it says Yehuda because in Golo you couldn't technically get it from the north to Yerushalayim because you have to go through there with Surah Shalkusim. But that's a side problem. But as far as the Amoris, he's trusted the whole year round. As Rashi says, because the Gemara said before that they shouldn't make his own bummer. There's also leniencies. Let's go through the Gemara. The Gemara said this point about the Rizah, and there's machlokas about Shida Teva Migdal, if it's possible to go with the old Zorak, machlokas. Rabbi says not. Old Zorak Lav Shmei oil. As far as Samad Pasel, Samad Pasel doesn't help for Kodesh. So therefore, there's no way to get it through. And even when it says Chavai Matkin Beglila, that's only that they should save it over there until Mashiach comes. Then they'll be able to get it through with Surah Shalkusim. But now you can't. So that's the reason why it says Yehuda. All that Gemara came out that you can't get things from the north to Yerushalayim B'Tara. Then it says that the whole year round he's trusted for Kodesh, but it's not trusted for Truma during the season. But during the season, he is trusted for Truma also. And the Mishnah that says that the Amoritz should set aside olives before they're pressed in order to get to the Kohen, because once it becomes olive oil, it's not going to be trusted. That's not necessarily true. During the season, he is trusted. He can make an olive oil. They're talking about that it's afli, that's after the season. That's when he has to make sure that he just leaves it as olives, not as olive oil, because the Kohen Chaver is not going to accept it. He can give it to a Kohen Amoritz, but if he wants to give it to a Kohen Chaver, he has to leave it as olives and not as olive oil. The Gemara talked about Golo, that the Reversa thought that the Amoritz is not trusted in Golo. As far as Truma goes, but the Gemara says it's not true. He is trusted. If it is past the season, the Mishnah says that Amoritz could save it for the next season. The Gemara wants to know if the Kohen was given it by mistake, could he also save it for the next season? Rav Sheish taught a raya that he may not, because it said something about somebody who Yashin from his father. It has nothing to do with it. Truma Tameya, that the father was an Amoritz, he has to get rid of it. But the Gemara deflects that proof by saying that it's a case where a kind of a product that doesn't have a season, not like wine and oil, and also there's no regel that he can save it to because it's not going to save. But otherwise, the Gemara leaves it as a question. Maybe the Kohen himself could also leave it to the next regel. The last thing was about that if it's simultaneously in the same barrel, it's going to be Kodesh and Truma, so then he's trusted on the Truma also. The Gemara brings a proof from this to the question we had by Bodkin, Ose Pesach, and Bodkin, Ose Truma, which was the case about a base of pras, that he can go through it by being menapeach or by if it was nidosh. So if he did go through for a korban pesach, could he also be lenient on the truma? And the Gemara brings a from Mishnah that he may, to say that it will be too much of a contradiction, that it's good for the korban pesach and it's not good for the truma. And even though there's machlokes Ula and Rabba Ula, the Gemara brings a proof from our Mishnah that he is good for the truma also. The last thing was about this thing about the jugs, and even though our Mishnah is not so usual terminology, to say Meduma means something about Kodesh. That's what it means over here, that if there's some wine in this barrel which is designated to become used for Kodesh, then he's trusted on the barrel also. And there was a brisa that said that he's not trusted on the barrels of Kodesh if they're empty, even though he's empty barrels. He said, I designated it for Truma, for Kodesh. He's not believed. It means we don't trust Amoris for that. But if it's full of Kodesh, then he's trusted on the barrels also. For Truma, he's not trusted even if it is full of the Truma, and the Truma is good, but the barrel is not good. And something came out over here that since it's only, if it would have been mamish Kodesh inside the barrel. Places is mashma that he be trusted the whole year on the barrel also. But here's talking about that it only was designated to take out the Kodesh from there, not that it's ready, it's not now it hasn't yet been made Kodesh. So then he's only trusted during the season and also 70 days earlier, because that's when they start preparing the barrels for the pressing season. Hope that's good. And we'll be back in a few minutes with Pirkei Avos.
Go ahead.